Welcome back to Investing Talk podcast. Today, we're focusing our attention on Carnival Corporation. We're really tackling that crucial question, is this stock a good time to buy now?
Yeah, it's a big one. Lots of movement there.
Exactly.
Well,
So our mission today is to systematically unpack, the fundamental health, the technicals, and any upcoming catalysts for the global cruise leader.
sounds good. Let's get into it.
And just quickly, if you find this analysis helpful, please do remember to subscribe, like, and comment. It really helps us bring you more content like this.
Definitely.
Also, let us know in the comments below if there's a specific company you'd like us to look into next time. We do read those. Okay, so let's start with the financials. The foundation, the why behind the Carnival story. It's really been a dramatic post-pandemic recovery, hasn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Dramatic is the right word.
We see the trailing 12 months revenue, the TTM, it's rebounded really strongly, hitting $25.97 billion.
That figure, it's not just recovery. I mean, that's defining explosive growth and market dominance, really, in the travel sector.
Yeah.
You look back, pre-pandemic, 2019, peak revenue was closer to, what, $20.8 billion?
Yeah.
So hitting almost $26 billion now. That confirms two big things. One, consumer demand is back with a vengeance. And two, critically, they've kept significant pricing power, even with all that capacity back online.
And that scale, importantly, it's translating directly to the bottom line. That's essential, right, for proving the recovery is actually sustainable and not just temporary.
Exactly. The TTM net income is now $2.53 billion. That reflects a really significant margin resurgence.
Yeah.
And when you look at the economics of, running a cruise line, scale is just immense. That margin expansion, it comes from filling those ships, right? Utilizing the fleet fully.
Yeah.
Drives down the cost per passenger.
Makes sense.
So yeah, $2.53 billion in net income. It really shows that operational leverage is back in a big way.
Yeah.
Addresses a lot of that skepticism that hung around the stock early in the recovery.
And we have some very fresh data, too. As of today, September 29th, 2025, the company just reported its Q3 2025 earnings.
Hot off the press.
Yeah, and it's a huge confirmation point. EPS came in at $1.33. That significantly beat analyst estimates.
All right, every beat.
And revenue was $8.2 billion, also surpassing the forecasts.
Okay, so that Q3 beat, that's definitely a major catalyst in itself. We'll talk more catalysts later, but this is huge.
For sure.
But, you got to ask, does Q3 just represent that peak summer demand? Can they keep that kind of EPS power going through the historically slower winter season?
That's the key question.
And that's where valuation comes in, right? The market seems to still be treating the stock with, let's say, some caution. The trailing PE is sitting at 16.6.
Okay.
And the forward PE is 14.1.
And why is that interesting for listeners? Why focus on those numbers?
Well, because both of those are actually below the broader travel and leisure sector averages. Those often trade closer to 20 times earnings, sometimes higher.
Right.
So that PE discount, it suggests the market hasn't fully bought into the sustainability of that, $2.5 billion plus profit run rate. It implies there's still some investor skepticism, probably tied to their debt load, which we should definitely get into, or maybe just the historical cyclicality of the business.
Okay.
But for value-oriented investors, seeing a forward PE of 14.1 on a proven market leader like Carnival, it suggests the stock might still be underappreciated, based purely on current profitability.
And it seems analysts are betting that skepticism is going to fade. We're seeing 17 analysts maintaining a strong buy rating.
17 buys, yeah. That's a strong consensus.
And their consensus 12-month price target is sitting at $32.76. Given we closed today at $30.62, it's still, decent upside just to hit the average analyst target.
Decent room to run, yeah.
Okay, so that financial picture looks quite strong. But how durable is it? Let's try and connect this to their competitive edge, the thing that lets them demand the prices that drove that, massive $26 billion revenue number.
Right. What's fascinating here is just the sheer scale and diversification. Carnival Corporation isn't just one cruise line, right? It's the world's largest cruise operator. They own 9 distinct cruise lines. You've got Costa, Princess, Holland America.
Big names.
Exactly. This unmatched fleet scale and that brand portfolio, it ensures they can basically appeal to almost every demographic globally. That gives them significant pricing power across different markets.
And that brand strength, it's backed up by tangible assets too, right? Like those unique destinations, their private islands, exclusive experiences, things competitors find hard to replicate.
Absolutely.
Right.
That creates a really strong kind of self-reinforcing moat.
Yeah.
I mean, think about the barriers to entry here. If you wanted to launch a competing cruise line today. The capital costs are just astronomical. A single new ship is billions.
Billions.
And then you've got all the regulatory hurdles, safety, ports, international waters. It's incredibly complex. The incumbents, especially a giant like Carnival, they have this massive head start that makes their dominance pretty sticky.
Okay, let's turn to financial strength, though, because this is, as you mentioned, where the skeptical investor often focuses. Debt. It's kind of the elephant in the room.
It is.
Compared to pre-pandemic levels, the leverage is high. I mean, that borrowing was necessary just to survive the shutdowns, right?
Yeah, the debt load is definitely a non-trivial factor. No way around that. They had to take on significant, often high-yield debt just to weather those 18 months or so of basically zero revenue.
Tough times.
But, and this is the key point now, the strong profitability and that massive revenue momentum we just talked about, the $8.2 billion in Q3 alone, that's causing rating agencies to view the balance sheet risk as, well, rapidly declining. The whole narrative is shifting. It's moving from survival risk just a year or two ago to manageable operational debt today.
That's a crucial shift, especially for long-term investors. And a key signal we'd be looking for then is management strategy for rewarding shareholders.
Exactly.
Right now, there's no dividend. They had to cut it during the pandemic.
Understandable.
But the robust free cash flow they're generating now, it definitely opens up the possibility of reinstating it or maybe doing aggressive share buybacks down the road.
And management has specifically flagged this. They know that getting capital back to shareholders is kind of the final stage of this whole recovery story.
Right.
And that promise, that potential, it's a massive incentive for investors hanging on.
Right.
When we see that cash flow really accelerating, the question shifts, doesn't it? It's not if they reinstate the dividend, but when and how large.
Yeah.
And that event, just the announcement itself, could potentially re-rate the stock, get it closer to those sector average PE multiples we talked about.
Okay, so the fundamentals look pretty robust. The competitive moat seems strong, even with those debt concerns being managed down. But, the market often prices things in quickly. Let's look at the technical chart. Does it suggest we've already missed the big move, or is there still room to run here?
Right. This is where we look for confirmation in the price action itself. As of today, September 29th, 2025, Carnival is, well, pretty decidedly in a bullish price channel.
Okay.
It's been posting higher lows and higher highs. The price has been trading recently between, let's say, roughly $20.41 on the low end and $30.62 on the high end.
And the current close.
Right at that recent high, $30.62, bumping right up against it.
Okay, so this raises that important question for anyone thinking about an entry point. What are the key levels we should be watching?
A good question. Since the price is right at the top of its recent range, we need to look at resistance first. Key resistance levels seem to be clustering around $32 to $33.50.
$32 to $33.50.
Yeah. A successful, sustained break above $33.50, that would be the sort of official bullish breakout signal. That could validate the whole recovery story to a new class of, say, momentum traders.
And if that happens?
Well, then some of those analyst upside targets, the ones reaching up towards $39, they start looking a lot more achievable.
Okay. And on the downside, for risk management?
Right. Key support levels, places where buyers might step in on a minor pullback, look to be around the $25 to $26.50 zone. A dip towards there could be seen as a buying opportunity by some, assuming the fundamentals hold up.
Got it. And what about momentum indicators? Do they confirm this positive outlook?
They mostly do, yeah. The price is trading just slightly above its 50-day simple moving average, the SMA, which is at $30.49. That's generally seen as a bullish signal for near-term momentum.
Okay.
And crucially, it remains well above the 200-day SMA, which is way down at $25.19.
Big gap there.
Yeah, that wide spread really supports the longer-term breakout thesis. It shows there's been strong, sustained buying pressure over months, not just, a few weeks.
And the RSI, is it looking overbought up here?
Actually, no. If we look at the relative strength index, the RSI, it's sitting at 46.4.
Okay, explain that quickly.
Sure. RSI measures the speed and change of price movements. Generally above 70 is considered overbought, maybe due for a pullback. Under 30 is oversold.
So 46.4 is?
It's perfectly neutral, maybe slightly leaning bullish, but definitely not overbought. It means the stock technically has room to run towards that $33.50 resistance without immediately flashing exhaustion signals.
Okay. And who's doing the buying? Who's driving this run?
Well, market sentiment seems reinforced by rising institutional ownership. We're seeing large funds significantly increasing their stakes in the company.
That's important.
It is. It happens as that balance sheet recovery becomes more tangible, more visible in the numbers. These big funds, they don't typically move on rumors alone. They react to structural improvements.
Right.
And that recent Q3 earnings beat we discussed, that's only going to solidify this trend, likely attracting even more long-term capital from institutions who believe the debt issues are being handled effectively.
Okay, this is interesting. Let's turn our attention now to the near-term future.
Right.
What are the upcoming catalysts? Things over the next, say, 3 months that could really move the stock?
Yeah, this is where it gets potentially quite active.
The Q3 2025 earnings report, the one just out, that's already acting as a major catalyst, right? Pushing the price right up towards that resistance level.
Absolutely. That set the stage.
Yeah.
But the schedule ahead is actually pretty packed. Each date could be a potential spark.
Like what?
Okay, so we've got a major ETF quarterly rebalance coming up on October 15th. That can sometimes force large index funds to buy shares, depending on weighting changes.
Interesting.
Then, very importantly, there's the 2025 holiday booking report. That's due around November 4th. That gives us crucial insight into future revenue stability, how next year is shaping up.
Critical data point.
Then, institutional 13F filings are due November 18th. That's when we'll see exactly which big funds we're buying during Q3, confirms that institutional flow we mentioned.
Right.
And then, of course, the next big one, the Q4 2025 earnings release, expected around December 9th.
Busy quarter ahead.
Definitely. And beyond those scheduled reports, you've also got things like new ship launches, itinerary expansions planned for the 2025-2026 season. Those act as positive background noise.
And what about the less confirmed stuff? The speculative buzz you sometimes hear floating around financial forums.
Yeah, there's always some chatter, isn't there?
Mm-hmm.
We're hearing unconfirmed rumors about maybe a potential strategic acquisition, perhaps consolidating a smaller competitor.
Okay.
There's also speculation, especially after that strong Q3 beat, about maybe a special dividend announcement sooner rather than later.
That would be big.
And some background chatter about potential executive leadership changes, maybe aimed at driving even more efficiencies. Again, purely speculative.
Right, you never invest solely on rumors.
Never. But these signals, they add potential upside scenarios and they help keep momentum traders interested,
Got it. But we can't just talk about catalysts without balancing it with the risks. We have to acknowledge that high leverage, even if declining, it's still high compared to pre-pandemic.
Yeah.
It demands continued strong cash flow to keep paying it down.
Exactly. That's the flip side. This isn't some stable, predictable tech stock.
Yeah.
This is still a cyclical business at its core. And that high beta, 2.71, that's a massive risk factor you absolutely have to be aware of.
Maybe clarify beta quickly for listeners.
Sure, a beta of 2.71 basically means, historically, if the overall stock market, like the S&P 500, moves up by 1%, Carnival stock has tended to move up by about 2.71%.
Amplified upside.
Right. But the reverse is also true. If the market falls by 1%, this stock tends to fall almost 3 times as hard. It exaggerates market moves.
That volatility makes it really sensitive to macroeconomic headwinds, doesn't
It's
it?
hugely sensitive. If, say, the Federal Reserve keeps interest rates higher for longer, that could challenge consumer demand for big-ticket luxury purchases like cruises.
Makes sense.
We also always have to watch fuel costs, a major input for them. And increasingly, unfortunately, geopolitical shocks in key regions where they operate can disrupt itineraries and bookings. So if we were to see a sudden, sharp, global slowdown, that high debt load combined with the massive fixed operating costs of running that global fleet, well, it could turn that nice margin expansion into margin compression pretty quickly.
Right.
That's precisely why that Q3 beat was so important and why the upcoming holiday booking report on November 4th is so crucial. They have to keep proving that demand is robust enough to power through those potential macro pressures.
Okay. So we've looked at the fundamentals, the moat, the technicals, the catalysts, the risks. After this exploration, let's bring it back to the beginning. What does this all mean for that initial question? Is now a good time to buy Carnival Corporation?
Well, weighing everything up, the overall assessment leans, I'd say, strongly bullish. If I had to put a number on it, maybe an 8.5 out of 10.
8.5. Okay. Why so high?
The rationale really rests on that confirmed financial recovery. The revenues, the margins are there now.
Yeah.
That's coupled with pretty strong technical confirmation from the charts, clear institutional backing building up,
Yeah.
and a really dense calendar of what might be underappreciated near-term catalysts, like the follow-through from Q3 results and that potential path towards dividends or buybacks really coming into focus.
And what about the investment horizon? Is this a short-term trade or a long-term hold?
I think the best way to look at it might be dual.
Dual, how so?
Short term, meaning the next, say, 90 days, it looks quite attractive as a potential catalyst-driven trade, especially given that resistance break potential we talked about above $33.50. There could be momentum there.
Okay.
But also, long term, the company seems extremely well positioned for structural growth. You've got demographic tailwinds, right? Aging populations globally mean more potential customers with disposable income for travel and retirement.
Good point.
And furthermore, their continued push into newer markets like Asia-Pacific and Latin America, that provides a really long runway for sustained passenger volume growth.
Yeah.
Much of that is still relatively untapped compared to North America or Europe.
Okay, so potential for both traders and long-term investors.
Potentially, yes.
Yeah.
Depending on your risk tolerance, obviously, given that beta.
Right. So let's wrap up with a final provocative thought for our listeners to consider.
Okay, here's something to mull over. We know bookings are strong. We see the margin expansion. Now, if Carnival were to announce some kind of major partnership, maybe focused on really innovative digital booking systems, something that's been rumored here and there, how quickly could that new, maybe more efficient revenue channel accelerate their debt reduction timeline? Could that speed up a potential dividend announcement even more? And could that fundamentally re-rate the stock, pushing it well above that current consensus target of $32.76, maybe even toward those higher analyst targets near $39, simply because the balance sheet risk profile improves faster than expected? Something to think about.
Interesting angle. Food for thought indeed. All right, thank you for tuning into this analysis. We really hope this has given you a clearer picture of Carnival Corporation today.
Always helpful.
If you like this discussion, please do subscribe, like, and comment below. And definitely let us know which stock you want us to review next time. We'll see you on the next one.